It was supposed to be a simple road trip. Me, my boyfriend Greg, and our two friends, Jamie and Alex, had planned it for months. A scenic drive through the Appalachian Mountains, camping under the stars, just us and the endless woods. No cell service, no city lights, just raw, untouched wilderness. Greg was the most experienced camper, so he took charge. He picked the spot, a remote clearing about 4 miles from the nearest dirt road. No people, no noise, he'd said excitedly. Just nature. That first night was perfect. We pitched our tents, started a fire, and grilled burgers while telling stupid ghost stories. The only light was our fire. The only sound was the occasional hoot of an owl. Everything was so still, so peaceful. Then, at around midnight, we heard it. A whistle. Faint, but distinct, coming from somewhere beyond the trees. Jamie froze mid-sip of her beer. Did you guys hear that? Greg waved it off. Probably just wind. But then it came again. A long, slow whistle. Almost musical, like someone calling a dog. Only there were no houses for miles, no trails, no reason for another person to be out here. We sat in silence, waiting. Nothing. Alex chuckled nervously. That was weird. We brushed it off and went back to our night. The whistle didn't come again, but something else did. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to a sound. Rustling. Soft footsteps moving around outside our tents. My heart pounded. A bear? A coyote? Then I heard something worse. Breathing. Low, steady, and too close. I held my breath, straining to hear. My fingers curled around the zipper of my tent. I peeked out. A shadow moved between the trees. Not an animal. A person. I swallowed a scream and backed away. Greg, I whispered, shaking him awake. He groaned, eyes barely open. What? There's someone out there. That woke him up fast. He sat up, listening. Silence. I wasn't imagining it. I couldn't have been. Then, from outside, the whistle. Long, slow. Right by our campsite. Greg tensed. He grabbed his flashlight, unzipped the tent, and shined the beam outside. Nothing. The woods were empty. We woke Jamie and Alex, whispering frantically about what I saw. Greg wanted to investigate. It's probably just some hiker messing with us. But something in my gut screamed no. Let's just leave, I said. Now. Greg hesitated, but the fear in my voice must have convinced him. We packed our stuff in record time, moving fast but quiet. We hiked back to the car, flashlights bouncing in the dark. Then we heard it again. Not just a whistle. Footsteps. Heavy, fast, chasing us. We broke into a sprint. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but we didn't stop. Finally, we burst through the trees and onto the dirt road where our car was parked. And that's when we saw the second figure, standing by our car. Tall, motionless, just waiting. No flashlight, no gear, just a dark silhouette in the moonlight. Then, the whistler emerged from the trees behind us, trapping us. Greg didn't hesitate. He pulled his knife and stepped forward. Who the hell are you? Neither figure answered. They just whistled, perfectly in sync. Two identical, eerie tunes filling the silent night. Then they stepped toward us. We ran, not toward the car, deeper into the woods, down the road, anywhere but there. Branches tore at my skin. I could hear Alex sobbing, Jamie gasping for breath. We didn't stop running until we saw headlights. A truck barreling down the road toward us. We waved and screamed, and the driver, an old man, slammed the brakes. We piled in, begging him to go. Jesus Christ, he muttered, slamming the gas. You're lucky I came by. This ain't a safe place at night. We looked back. The two figures stood in the middle of the road, watching, still whistling. We made it back to town just before sunrise. None of us spoke a word on the drive home. Greg sold his camping gear the next day. Jamie moved out of state a month later. Alex doesn't talk about it. Ever. And me? I still hear the whistles sometimes. Always at night. Always when I'm alone. Story 2. We shouldn't have gone down that road. It was one of those roads you pass on long drives. One that shouldn't be there. A narrow, crumbling stretch of asphalt that cut through a dense patch of woods, swallowed in shadow even at midday. The kind of road that looks like it's been forgotten by time. I was driving. My girlfriend, Lena, sat beside me, flipping through an old mixtape CD she found in the glove compartment. In the back, our friends Mark and Zoe were half asleep, nodding along to the hum of the engine. We were headed to a cabin we'd rented for the weekend. The GPS said another hour, but then we saw it. A sign, weathered and barely legible. Scenic route, historic drive. The road beneath the sign was barely more than gravel. Lena nudged my arm. Let's take it. Might be a shortcut. Mark yawned, stretching. Yeah, why not? I could use some cool scenery. I don't know why I listened. As soon as we turned, the trees thickened, the sunlight dimmed. The road narrowed until branches scraped at the car, clawing like fingers. I drove slower. The GPS lost signal. This feels off, Zoe murmured, peering out the window. I agreed. Then we saw the first sign. A wooden post hammered into the ground, its message etched deep in jagged letters. Do not stop. We all exchanged uneasy glances. Okay, that's creepy, Mark said with a nervous chuckle. I eased my foot onto the gas, but the road was winding, snaking left and right with no end in sight. Then the second sign appeared. Do not speak. Lena swallowed. This is a joke, right? Nobody answered. The car rolled forward in thick silence. Then Zoe gasped. She pointed to the woods. Did you see that? I turned my head just in time to see movement. A shape, tall and thin, standing between the trees. Watching, I pressed the gas harder. The road seemed endless, stretching on, a labyrinth with no exit. The forest pressed closer. Then came the third sign. Do not look back. I clenched the wheel so hard my knuckles ached. Lena's breathing was shallow. I hate this. Mark checked his phone. No service. Nothing. The air inside the car felt heavier, thicker. The temperature had dropped. Then, the car shuddered. Something slammed against the trunk. Zoe screamed. I checked the rearview mirror. A mistake. A face. Pale, hollowed, twisted in an unnatural grin. Staring through the back window. Not on the road. Inside the car. I slammed the brakes. The tires screeched. The car fishtailed, skidding to a stop. We were panting, wide-eyed, gripping our seats. The face was gone. Silence. Then, from the back seat, a whisper. Low. Familiar. Why did you stop? We all froze. Mark was sitting in the back. Zoe was sitting in the back. Nobody else. I didn't turn around. Drive, Lena whispered. I slammed the gas. The car roared forward. The road straightened. The trees thinned. Sunlight returned. And then, just like that, we burst back onto the main road. The GPS flickered back to life. Signal restored. I pulled over a mile later, breathing hard. We looked back. The road was gone. Not blocked, not hidden. Just gone. Mark swore under his breath. What the hell just happened? None of us had an answer. We never spoke about it again. But sometimes, when I'm driving alone at night, I hear it. A whisper from the back seat. Low. Familiar. Why did you stop? Story 3. I still don't know how we made it out alive. It started as a stupid dare. One of those drunken ideas that sound fun until you realize how badly you've messed up. There was a house on the outskirts of town. The kind kids told stories about. The kind that made you shiver when you passed it alone at night. They called it the Wailing House because people swore they'd hear sobbing coming from inside, even though it had been abandoned for decades. I never believed the stories. Neither did my best friend Nate. So, on a Friday night, after too many drinks, we made a bet. We'd spend an hour inside. No phones, no flashlights, just us, a single candle, and the dark. We thought we were being brave. We were being idiots. The house smelled of rot. Mold bloomed along the peeling wallpaper, and the wooden floor creaked under our steps. We set the candle on the floor of the living room, its flickering glow barely reaching the corners of the room. Okay, Nate said, flopping onto the dusty couch. 1 hour. Easy. I wasn't so sure anymore. The air was thick, suffocating. The walls seemed too close, the shadows too deep. Then, a creak from upstairs. We both went still. Nate smirked. Wind, but there was no wind. The air was dead, unmoving. Then it came again. A footstep. Slow, deliberate, right above us. I exhaled, forcing a laugh. Probably a raccoon. Nate nodded, but I saw it in his eyes. He didn't believe that, either. Then the sobbing started. It was faint, like someone crying into their hands. Muffled. Pained. I grabbed Nate's arm. Dude, let's go. He hesitated. Then, the crying stopped. Silence. Then the whisper. Don't leave. Right next to my ear. I screamed. The candle went out. The room plunged into darkness. Then, in the pitch black, I heard it. Footsteps. Rushing toward us. We ran. I don't remember how we got to the door. I only remember shoving it open, sprinting into the night, lungs burning, hearts hammering. We didn't stop running until we reached the car. We dove inside, locked the doors, gasping for air. Silence. Then Nate's phone buzzed. One new video. He played it. The footage was grainy, dark. Just the flickering candlelight in the living room. Then, a shadow. Tall, thin, standing behind me. Close enough to touch. And as I reached for the door, it reached for me. We never spoke of that night again. But sometimes, when I'm alone, I hear it. A whisper, right next to my ear. Don't leave. Story 4. I never believed in ghosts. Not until the night shift. I was working as a security guard at a retirement home. A quiet job, easy money. My only real duties were checking the doors, patrolling the halls, and making sure none of the residents wandered off. The place was old, built in the 1940s. Long hallways, flickering lights, that stale hospital smell that clung to everything. Most of the residents were asleep by 10, leaving the place eerily silent. Except for room 16. It had been empty for months. The last resident, Mrs. Holloway, had passed away in her sleep. Peaceful, they said, but staff whispered about her. Said she'd talk to people who weren't there. Said she'd laugh in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling. I didn't think much of it, until the knocking started. It was past midnight when I heard it. A soft, rhythmic tap, tap, tap. I frowned, checking the monitors. Room 16's door was closed, just like always. But the knocking continued, steady, patient. I grabbed my flashlight and made my way down the hall. Tap, tap, tap. The sound was definitely coming from room 16. I hesitated, then knocked back. Silence. Then, slowly, the door creaked open. The room was dark, the bed neatly made, the air thick with the scent of old perfume. Empty. I stepped inside, sweeping the flashlight across the walls. Then I saw them. Handprints. Dozens of them. Smeared across the window. Small, like a child's. But no children lived here. A cold breeze brushed past me, and I turned. The door slammed shut. I lunged for the handle, yanking it open, stumbling back into the hallway. The knocking started again, from inside the room. Louder. Faster. I ran. I told the nurses, but they just gave me that look, like I was crazy. Happens sometimes, one muttered. Nothing to worry about. I quit the next day, but sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I hear it. Tap, tap, tap. Story 5. I don't tell people this story anymore. Not because I'm scared they won't believe me, but because I know they will. It happened 3 years ago, when I took a job as a delivery driver for a small-town pharmacy. Late shifts, long drives, nothing exciting. I spent most nights delivering medication to elderly folks too sick to pick it up themselves. But then there was Crescent Lane, a dead-end street on the far edge of town. No streetlights, no sidewalks, just 4 abandoned houses and a single occupied one at the very end. The orders were always for the same person, Margaret Sloan. She was listed as 89 years old, bedridden. I'd never seen her, never met her. But every month, the pharmacy sent me with a delivery. And every month, the instructions were the same. Leave the package on the porch. Do not knock. Do not wait. I didn't think much of it at first. Just another elderly shut-in. But then I started noticing things. The way the house was too dark, not a single light inside, even at night. The way the rocking chair on the porch would sway on windless evenings. The way I always felt watched. The 4th time I delivered there, I broke the rule. I knocked. It was barely a tap, just enough to feel like I wasn't leaving drugs unattended. The moment my knuckles touched the wood, something moved inside. A shuffling sound, then a whisper, right against the door. Come in. I froze. My heart pounded. I stepped back. Just leaving your medicine, ma'am. Silence. Then the door handle twitched, like someone on the other side was about to open it. I ran back to my car and peeled out of there, tires screeching. That should have been the end of it. But 2 days later, my manager called me in. He looked pale, unsettled. There was a complaint, he said. From who? He hesitated. Margaret Sloane's family. I blinked. She has family? He nodded slowly, sliding a newspaper clipping across the counter. An obituary. Margaret Sloane. Dead. 23 years ago. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. I know. His voice was tight. But the house has been empty for decades. I never went back to Crescent Lane. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, I hear it. A whisper. Right outside my door. Come in.